request the audience to please be seated. Respected Professor Manmohan Sharma sir, respected P. Balaram sir, Professor Vinod K. Singh sir, Professor Tapas Chakraborty sir, Professor Shurvit Ghosh sir, and Registrar ma'am, respected dignitaries, deans, faculty members, students, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning and welcome you all to the second annual Convocation Ceremony 2022 for the Indian Association for the Cultivation of Science, Kolkata. Before we start today's program, we shall felicitate our dignitaries. We request our Director Sir, Professor Tapas Chakraborty, to felicitate Professor P. Balaram, our guest of eminence today. Now I request Professor Shurvit Ghosh, Chairman Convocation Committee, to felicitate Professor Manmohan Sharma sir, our guest of honor today. Now I request our students to felicitate Professor Vinod K. Singh, Chairman Governing Council IACS. We would like to felicitate our Director Sir, Professor Tapas Chakraborty. Now we would felicitate Professor Shurvit Ghosh, Chairman Convocation Committee. And I would felicitate our Registrar Ma'am, Ms. Sharmani Shah. Good morning and welcome you all. Now I request our Chairman Convocation Committee, Professor Shurvit Ghosh, to start today's program.
Thank you. The convocation of IACS deemed to be university has been called to distribute the degree certificates to the candidates who have been certified worthy of the degree by IACS and to confer Doctor of Science honoris causa. Open this convocation.
Now I request our Director Sir to give his welcome address and present the report, academic report.
Honorable Guest of Honor, Professor Manmohan Sharma, Honorable Guest of Eminence, Professor P. Balaram, Honorable Chairman of the Governing Council of IACS, Professor Vinod K. Singh, former Directors of IACS, other dignitaries, my colleagues, students, ladies and gentlemen, hearty welcome and good morning to all to the second annual convocation of this IACS deemed to be university. It is my privilege to present before you this academic report of this university. IACS is an autonomous body under the Department of Science and Technology, Government of India. Historically, IACS symbolizes this intellectual awakening of the swept that swept Bengal and India at large in 19th century, and the nationalistic science movement that started from the second half of this 19th century. Enriched by numerous pioneers of this Indian science, IACS happens to be an extraordinary institution where the past meets the present and with the promise to create the future. After 140 years of its existence, in 2018, IACS was conferred with its deemed to be university status under the de novo category by the Government of India. It is imperative that this institution is committed to explore uncharted avenue in offering de novo courses with a multidisciplinary initiative to promote cutting-edge research in various fundamental and applied sciences. I'm happy to mention that during the millennium, IACS, with a current faculty strength of about 68, nearly 600 PhD and research associates, has published more than 9,000 papers, with an average citation per paper is about 22, and average citation per year is more than 8,900, with an institute age index of 142. To talk about the performance of this university during this academic year 2021 and 22, the publications in the journals and this book chapter by 68 faculty members is about 417, average impact factor 5.86, PhD degree awarded is 61, that is nearly one PhD per faculty per year. Currently, IACS has its school structures. It has 6 schools of biological, chemical and physical sciences, mathematical and computational sciences, material sciences, and applied and interdisciplinary sciences. In this convocation, Masters of Science degree will be awarded to 44 students, MSc students, and 14 PhD students. I would like to clarify that many other students were registered in other universities before IACS acquired the deemed to be university status. And in the present academic year, they will get degrees from the other universities where they are registered. We are also conducting a joint Masters of Science program in the biological sciences with IIT Kharagpur, and they will get the degree from IIT Kharagpur only. The second annual convocation will remain memorable to us, to all our graduate students, and for IACS, due to this august present of this legendary like Professor Manmohan Sharma, FRS, and Padma Vibhushan, former chairman of this governing council of IACS, who is being conferred with this first doctorate of science, that is honoris causa degree of this IACS deemed to be university. And also this Padma Shri Professor Padma Vibhushan Balaram, and who is graced this occasion as the guest of eminence. I am particularly thankful to all the past and this present members of this governing council of IACS for steering IACS to where IACS has reached today. I am immensely grateful to my chairman, Professor Vinod Kumar Singh, who has guided us meticulously in organizing the ceremony in a befitting manner. Thank you.
Now the degree of Doctor of Science honoris causa would be awarded to Professor M.M. Sharma. The citation will be read out by Professor Taposh Chakraborty, Director IACS and Chairman Academic Council.
So reading out the citation, our honorary degree recipient has an extraordinary story of an incredibly special person who is also a legend. Considered as an institution in himself, he has done pioneering contribution to the field of chemical engineering sciences, chemical industry, on government policy matters that is vital to the growth of the science and technology and the nation at large. Born on May 1, 1937 in the state of Rajasthan, his life story is truly amazing. He created a place for Indian chemical industry engineering on the global science and sustained the glamour of his noble profession in this country. Manmohan Sharma obtained the Bachelor's of Chemical Engineering degree from the Bombay University in 1958 and MS Tech in 1960. He obtained the PhD degree in Chemical Engineering from the Cambridge University. He is an average, Professor Sharma, while at Cambridge, that the system between this excitement of this academic research and that of this industry ultimate would be the theme of his research career. In 1964, he returned to India as professor at the University of Bombay and later became the director of the University Department of this Chemical Technology, now ICT, a deemed to be university. Professor Sharma's now acclaimed the original contribution of microphase catalysis, or the role of the particles smaller than that of this diffusion, film thickness, the so-called nanoparticles in the present context. On the liquid side, in interface of the reaction rate has been the genesis of a number of original research papers. He emphasized the value of the PhD students. He ensured that every young faculty members had PhD students in the department. He also ensured that they were attached to some industry as consultants. He has cultivated friendship with the scientists and this industrialist from all over the world and enriched his knowledge through discussions on a variety of topics. In recognition to his path-breaking contributions for the country in science, engineering, education, and industry, he has been honored by the several universities and these institutions like IACS. For his extensive scholarly contribution, he has received numerous awards, distinctions, including this Bhatnagar Prize in Engineering Sciences, and these other medals from these Royal Societies and TOAS medals. He is a fellow of this Indian National Science Academy, New Delhi, fellow of this Indian Academy of Sciences, Bangalore, and fellow of this National Academy of Sciences, Allahabad. He is a fellow of this World Academy of Sciences, and he is the first Indian engineer to be elected as this fellow of the Royal Society, London. Subsequently, he was elected honorary fellow by this Royal Academy of Engineering and is a foreign associate of the US National Academy of Engineering. He served in INSA Council members during 1980-82 and as a vice president 1987-88 and INSA president 1989-90. He served in Petroleum and Natural Gas Commission as the chairman of the SAC and in the SAC to the Cabinet, the Prime Minister, Government of India. He was conferred the prestigious civilian honors Padma Bhushan in 1987, Padma Vibhushan in 2001 due to his legendary contributions in science and engineering by the President of India. The conferment of this honorary degree of science is therefore an appropriate acknowledgement and recognition of Professor Manmohan Sharma, a self-made person, a champion of the lesser people, a visionary, a policymaker, and an innovator and an erudite, an internationally acclaimed scientist, a teacher par excellence, and an achiever in global education. It is with this great honor and pleasure that I present Professor Manmohan Sharma the award of this degree of science, honoris causa, the first one from the deemed to be University Indian Association for the Cultivation of Science. May I request our guest of honor, Professor Manmohan Sharma, to share his thoughts and vision about the IACS with our audience. And before that, I request this chairman of this governing council of IACS to present the medal. It's already done. Sorry. Please.
We request Professor Vinod K. Singh, Chairman Governing Council, to sign the record of degrees.
May I request our guest of honor, Professor Manmohan Sharma, to share his thoughts and vision about IACS with our audience. Professor Sharma, please.
Professor Balram, Chairman of the Governing Council, Professor Vinod Singh, Director Tapas Chakravarti, Registrar Sarvani Saha, Sri Professor Ghosh, former Director Shantanu Bhattacharya, the graduating students at Masters and PhD level, ladies and gentlemen. I feel at home while I'm on this podium, having been associated for several years with IACS, and I'm very nostalgic about my association, which is what I mentioned to Professor Tapas Chakravarti, that I have great emotional attachment to this place, which has seen spectacular achievements in the last several years. In fact, when they were only following very Puritan approach, like elsewhere in the world, in the Puritan universities of Oxford and Cambridge, that IACS has now started interacting with industry in a very fruitful way. And they have industry sponsorship. And unlike in the very beginning of this IACS, they have sought donations and received, which is a very welcome change in the history of IACS. I wish to really congratulate IACS for the kind of performance they have put up, the number of publications they have, because you just heard 60, 61 PhDs, one PhD per faculty member. Hardly any institution in India can match that, including the most renowned institutions in India. And that automatically follows that they are on an average publishing 3 to 4 papers of that order per PhD student. This is something very unusual, and that too in very good journals. And IACS had tradition that if somebody's paper came on the front, then it will be displayed in the entrance marble hall. I think it is a tribute to persons who get. Recently when I saw a young person from IACS, Anandita, on a coverage in Angabandi Shami as young scientist with in her own statement, her passion. I was very, very pleased because I regularly track, thanks to the availability of internet, that sitting at home you can survey all the journals, and I was very pleased because very rare occasion I have seen any Indian person appearing in Angabandi Shami, a very, very, very renowned journal with a very, very high impact factor. The campus has also undergone major changes. As you enter, you feel that you are arriving in a temple of learning with a glorious past, glorious present performance, and projected equally glorious, if not more glorious performance. I think IACS can only go places. The feather in the cap came when in the de novo category, which is an unusual kind of thing from UGC, that, and it was Professor Balram, the chairman of that committee, which recommended, and when I came here to say that I want to plead for this status to be given, Professor Balram shot back and said, "You don't have to plead, it is already done." I was thoroughly pleased with what he said at that time. And it is obviously based on the strength of this place. Now, persons who have been professor for many years, one comment I would like to make, they can afford to be far more daring in doing a very unusual kind of research which puts them on a pedestal. With the multidisciplinary approach, just see, for example, in the whole separation sciences and bordering on advances in material science, how MOF and COF are making wonderful different metal organic frameworks with areas as high as 3,500 square meters per gram. Now, the way things are changing, it is remarkable that we have to be in touch and go a step further. And I know IACS has all this, and I'm always happy to quote that the first paper, renowned paper in polymer science in a renowned journal in the world came from IACS. So it has many firsts to its credit, apart from the credit that goes to the persons who thought of creating such an organization. Now, in any academic institution, there will be always honest differences of opinion. And these honest differences of opinion can always be sorted out. And I always maintain, and in my response to the letter I received from Professor Tapas Chakrabarti, I said we need to remind ourselves that institutions are far greater than individuals. We come and go, institution remains. And we have to always respect the institution and the chair, irrespective of the person who occupies the chair, because you are honoring the chair, you are respecting the chair. I wish to urge all persons associated with IACS to keep this in mind, that institutions are bigger than any one of us and that we need to respect. I can easily foresee a very bright future, and this remarkable change that has come with the status of deemed university and the de novo category, that IACS will now start attracting students from all over India. We were pleading continuously that faculty members who go to different places in the country should become the messengers of IACS and say what kind of research is going on in IACS, and that they would be welcome. It's a refreshing change to now see people responding from all over India to the postgraduate course and PhD course in IACS. IACS will acquire truly national character in terms of intake as well as in terms of the faculty. I wish IACS very, very bright future. Nothing can stop functioning of IACS, and irrespective of the legacy it carries for such a long time. Thank you. I am most grateful to the Board of Governing Council Chairman, the Director and Academic Council for bestowing this honor on me. I will really cherish it for the rest of my life. As you were told, I did receive honorary doctorates from many institutions, including 5 IITs. But I value this the most because not only it is the oldest research institutions in the country, where Raman did the only Nobel Prize winning thing in science, but having been associated for several years, because I was made fellow many years ago. So my association goes back long before I became chairman of the governing council. So once again, wish you a very bright future, and I wish a very bright future for graduating students. Please keep in mind, research is ever evolving. Half-life of a chemical engineer is not more than 5 years. Half-life of a chemist or a biologist is definitely not more than 5 years. So please keep track of the latest development in the literature. Internet is a very powerful tool to be able to do that right at home. Thank you very much. Once again, my gratitude to IACS.
Thank you, sir, for your valuable words. Now I request Professor Vinod K. Singh, Chairman Governing Council, to present the medals to the top performing students in the Master of Science program. The gold medal for Master of Science program 2022 goes to Sreshtha Ghosh. Silver medal from the School of Applied and Interdisciplinary Sciences goes to Nandana Nanda. Okay, Nandana is not with us today. Silver medal from the School of Chemical Sciences goes to E.P. Ghosh. Silver medal from the School of Mathematical and Computational Sciences goes to Harshika Rathi. Silver medal from the School of Physical Sciences goes to Srija Ghosh. Now I request Professor Vinod K. Singh, Chairman Sir, Governing Council, to give his address.
Convocation is a very auspicious moment, and I feel very good today because in this convocation we have two people who had been very special to me. I respect them a lot, Professor Hemam Sharma and Professor Balram. I'm also happy that former director of IACS, Professor Santanu Bhattacharya, is sitting here, and other my friends like Subrata Ghosh and other former colleagues of IACS are here. It gives me immense pleasure that IACS is holding its second annual convocation after becoming deemed to be university under the now category. IACS is among the flagship research and educational institute in the country with the mandate to pursue cutting-edge research in all major areas of sciences and to develop trained, high-quality human resources, giving the most contemporary science education. The institute is unique in terms of scientists working in different interdisciplinary areas of the world standard. IACS has moved in the right direction by starting a MS program. For this, I congratulate IACS and the former director, Professor Santanu Bhattacharya. I always believe that every institute should have undergraduate program. And if somebody is called professor, they must teach a course. Annual Convocation is the celebration of the achievements of the graduates. I am very pleased that the hard work and dedication of the students have led to their success. They have successfully completed their stint at this deemed to be university, and now they are at the point of graduation. They have proven that they can adapt to changing circumstances. They kept going with purpose, focused on earning their academic degree and completing all that was required of them. They now know that they have the strength and determination to go on to succeed. Therefore, there is much added joy for all of us in celebrating the success today. From this day on, there will be graduates of the IACS deemed to be university. A big congratulations to each one of them. I am also happy that most or all the medals went to the girl students, and this is a really very, very good thing for IACS. I thank and honor all those who have supported the students on their university journey. As the chairman of the governing council, I am grateful for the wisdom and leadership of my colleagues of IACS who have guided the students through their journey. I thank all the parents of students, our faculty, staff, their advisors, coaches, and friends. All these people had faith in their dreams and potential, and they have all helped the students to be here today. Graduates, your academic college has recommended you receive your degree because you have completed all the university's requirements for this award. Therefore, it is my honor to confer upon each of you a degree from the IACS deemed to be university and all the rights, privileges and responsibilities that this brings. Normally my nature is, I never preach. If I preach, I practice. I will never say what you should do, but I tell you my PhD supervisor, he said long time back in 1984. And I always followed since 1984. Three things are very important in life. One is respect time. Second is be disciplined. Third is love your country. With this, I like to introduce the chief guest of eminence, Professor Balram. Everyone knows Professor Balram, and I have great respect. And I get a feel-good factor when I see him and talk to him. He doesn't say anything but half smile, and without saying anything, he conveys everything which I see, the sense which he has in his mind. So it's an honor for me to welcome Professor Balram, the chief guest, or guest of eminence for the second convocation of IACS, deemed to be university. It is my privilege to introduce Professor Balram to the audience. Professor Balram is an Indian scientist and former director of IIT Bangalore. He is the recipient of the third highest Indian civilian honor, Padma Bhushan. He has been conferred the 2021 R. Bruce Merrifield Award by the American Peptide Chemist Society. Professor Balram obtained his BSc in 1967 from Pune University, MSc in 1969 from IIT Kanpur, and PhD in 1972 from Carnegie Mellon University. He worked as a research associate with Professor R.B. Woodward at Harvard, and then he returned back to India and joined IIT Bangalore as a lecturer in 1973 and rose to the rank of professor in a very short period of time. Professor Balram has made outstanding contributions towards the understanding of the structure and function of voltage, gated transmembrane peptide channels. His contributions in the area of biological membranes and his developing fluorescent probe methodology for examining membrane structures are highly significant. He has published over 240 papers in the peer-reviewed journal. He has made significant contributions in addition to publishing paper, doing research in popularizing the science and scientific policy. What I liked about Professor Balram, when I used to interact several years ago, one thing I'm very passionate that every faculty must teach a course, every institution, especially that must have a teaching program, undergraduate program. And in his leadership, who brought the undergraduate program at IC Bangalore, but for him, I don't think it would have been possible. Professor Balram is the recipient of several awards and honors, notable among them INSA Medal for Young Scientists, Shansru Bhatnagar Prize, TWAS, the World Academy of Science Award and the Fellowship, and of course, Padma Bhushan, and he's fellow of all the Science Academy of the country. May I now request Professor Balram to deliver his convocation address. Professor Balram.
It's a privilege for me to be with all of you at this convocation of the Indian Association for the Cultivation of Science. My warmest congratulations and best wishes to all the students who are graduating today, and of course to their families for whom this is a very important day. I must say it's also a very special privilege for me to share the dais with Professor Manmohan Sharma, one of India's most distinguished scientists and engineers, and even more importantly, in the decades that I have known him, one of the most vocal and tireless campaigners for the cause of both academic science and research and industry. There are very few people in India who can actually match the passion that he has for science in all its forms. Your institution occupies a special position in the history of science in modern India as the first institution conceived for carrying out scientific research. When Mahendralal Sarkar envisioned this institution in 1876, no other research institution really existed in India. The second research institute to be conceived in India was that by Jamshed Tata, which eventually grew into the Indian Institute of Science. The two institutions followed different trajectories over the 20th century. And today, when you look at it, these are among the most important institutions in India, even today, at the forefront of scientific research. Mahendralal Sarkar was a visionary who saw clearly that the future would be dominated by science. He also recognized something that is not very well known, the intimate connection between research and teaching. He said in 1900, and I quote, "The world's chief and greatest discoveries have been made by those who had or have to teach. Educational institutions still furnish the best laboratories for research. Pure research institutions have only recently come into existence." Your institution, of course, has its name etched in history, immortalized by Raman's path-breaking research on the scattering of light. In coming to this convocation, I asked myself, what should I talk to you about? Even as your minds as students are dominated by two conflicting emotions. We've all graduated, so we know that. We sort of have this regret for leaving an institution where we've spent the most enjoyable years of our lives. And of course, there's the excitement of anticipating a new chapter that will soon begin. I had the opportunity of having a ringside view of the processes that led to the recognition of IACS as a deemed university. This transformation under the former director, Professor Shantanu Bhattacharya, was driven by the recognition that it was important to embed undergraduate science education in an ambience where research was very much a part of the environment. Your institution always had research. Why is this so? This is because it is the scientific advances of the last 2 centuries that have driven the modern technological revolution. And over the last few years, you would have seen an upsurge of public awareness in science, driven by the coronavirus. The coronavirus has done more to make people think about science than any other phenomenon in recent times. The COVID-19 pandemic has been a driver. Everybody knows RT-PCR, rapid antigen tests, aerosol transmission, mRNA vaccines, and mathematical modeling. These are terms that people use in discussions even though they've never studied science. 55 years ago, when I graduated and went out into the world with a bachelor's degree, it was a different world. 36 years ago, when I reached the high point of any academic career, that is to become a professor, the world around me was still largely as it was in the 1960s. But in this interregnum, unknown to me, many revolutions were underway in science and technology. These upheavals, these revolutions, spanned a range of disciplines: genome sequencing and genetic engineering in biology, the explosion of computer technologies, and the communications revolution. The internet, and Professor Sharma mentioned this in his address, and the internet has done more for me after retirement than any other invention in recent times. The internet, Google, the cell phone, all of these have forever transformed the way we live. The students who are graduating today cannot imagine a world without all of these. How did these technological advances happen? They rested on fundamental breakthroughs in chemistry, physics, biology, material science, mathematics, and computer science, often the results of many decades of painstaking research. Rarely were they the blinding flash of insight that often makes science look glamorous and romantic from the outside. Think of gene sequencing technologies. Reflect on the lithium battery which powers your cell phone, so central to our lives, or the electronic processes that drive all our devices and many more. You will realize that science and technology are inseparable. Even the seeds of Google's page rank algorithm. You type something into Google, it gives you a search result. What is this algorithm based on? You can find the seeds of this algorithm in the scientific literature of the 1950s, when Eugene Garfield laid the foundations of the web of science, ushering in the age of scientometrics. Professor M.M. Sharma mentioned the term impact factor, invented by Garfield. It was a famous paper published in 1955 in Science, Citation Indexes for Science, a new dimension in documentation through association of ideas. This was before computers became so fashionable. But what Garfield raised was the foundations of an algorithm. That algorithm really is an algorithm which will drive all search engines today. As graduates in science, you might ask a question: what is science? Sometimes you might, as I have done, ask yourself the question and also seek an answer, because you have to tell someone what is science. You might answer that science is the study of nature. That, of course, leads to another question: what is nature? Very difficult to define nature. The best answer that I found was in the editorial that appeared in the first volume of the journal Nature that appeared in 1869. The famous biologist Thomas Huxley had been commissioned to write the editorial. He didn't write the editorial. Instead, what he did was he translated a German essay written by the poet von Goethe. And I quote the poet's words: nature, as translated by Huxley, nature, we are surrounded and embraced by her, powerless to penetrate beyond her and powerless to separate ourselves from her. Can you think of a better definition? It is therefore not surprising that the two most influential journals in science are called Nature and Science. You think of the subjects that you studied. Physics and biology are with you all the time, although you might not choose to acknowledge the fact. When you move, you are connecting to Newton. When you look around and you see plants and flowers and animals and other human beings, and even look at yourself, you're connected to biology. But you must also remember that nothing in the world around you, including yourself, is divorced from chemistry. Some years ago, the Bombay High Court had an interesting judgment, and this Professor Sharma would undoubtedly like. They declared from the pulpit of the High Court that steam is not a chemical. Immediately after they did this, the Royal Society of Chemistry offered a reward of £1 million to anyone who produces a material that is non-chemical. That offer, I believe, is still open, and you can look around you and see that you can't do it. So the Royal Society will keep its £1 million. The only people who can produce things which are not chemicals are those who write advertisements. There's an advertisement for tartar salt, which now talks about all the things in that salt which are not chemical. And similarly, Patanjali, who will advertise cleaning and other products which are chemical-free. What about mathematics? I can do no better than remind you that Galileo once remarked that mathematics is the language in which God wrote the universe. If I paraphrase this, and I was trained in chemistry, I might add that chemistry is the language in which nature wrote the book of life. The biochemist Arthur Convocation, the man who discovered DNA polymerase and fired the first shot of the biotechnology revolution as far back as the late 1950s, he described chemistry in his later years as the lingua franca of the biological and medical sciences. It is indeed the lingua franca of the medical and biological sciences, but sometimes it turns out that biologists and medical practitioners study the least bit of chemistry, much less than what they really need. Science requires tools, and we underestimate the role of technology in driving science. The theoretical physicist Freeman Dyson once noted that science is often driven by new technologies rather than by new concepts. This is sometimes a disturbing thing for new students. They imagine that science is driven by pure thought sometimes. This is not true. Two 17th century inventions, the telescope and the microscope, forever transformed the way we think about nature. When Galileo pointed the telescope upwards, skywards, what did he see? He saw a world which you cannot see with the naked eye. The field of cosmology was born. When the Dutchman Leeuwenhoek, after having made the first microscope, looked at a drop of water, he saw microorganisms swimming in the water, bacteria. He had discovered microbiology. So cosmology on the one hand, microbiology on the other, all of these have been discovered because there are tools which take us beyond what our eyes can see. Tools are also discovered when fundamental research allows scientists to make observations that lead to far-reaching conclusions and applications. Pasteur's classic resolution of tartaric acid opened the field of stereochemistry and also its wide-ranging impact on biochemistry. The relationship between chirality of molecules, optical rotation, the importance of chirality in chemistry and biochemistry rests on Pasteur's famous experiment. Fleming's discovery of penicillin is often quoted as an example of a serendipitous discovery. But in the 20th century, we've had, separated by span of maybe 7 decades, 2 discoveries which revolutionized medicine. I'm using these as an example to tell you that science is important. Both of these came from physics. The first was Roentgen's discovery of X-rays. When he was doing his experiments with cathode ray tubes, and he began to notice that there were rays coming out, making an impression on a photographic plate which had been placed some distance away, he called his wife into the room and told her to keep her hand in front of it. What he got on the image was then the skeletal image of her hand. When this photograph was first seen, Roentgen's wife had a remarkable reaction. She said, "I have seen death." And in fact, when you see a skeletal image, you are in fact looking at a skeleton. Physicists did not think much of the discovery of X-rays, but medical practitioners immediately realized that here was now a revolutionary diagnostic tool. And X-rays then became indispensable in diagnostic radiology. But many decades later, 7 decades later in the 1970s, Paul Lauterbur, using nuclear magnetic resonance and inhomogeneous magnetic fields, imaged 2 concentric glass tubes of water. I saw this first image as a graduate student. At that time it made no sense whatsoever. But this image of 2 concentric tubes of water was in fact the first experiment in imaging, one which fetched Lauterbur the Nobel Prize many years later for inventing magnetic resonance imaging, which is the second driver of radiology departments today. Those of us who always marvel at the wonders of nature ask the question, where did everything we see around us, where did it come from? This leads to questions which cannot always be answered. Questions on the origins of the universe, questions on the origins of life on Earth. All the natural elements in Mendeleev's periodic table are the Earth's inheritance when it was born. Nucleosynthesis, which leads to the elements, is the prerogative of the stars, our sun amongst them. There is a book that you must read called The Ascent of Man by Jacob Bronowski. He describes how man has evolved over the centuries, over the millennia, over the last 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 years. And in one chapter he describes the formation of carbon, so essential for life. And I simply quote, "In all the stars there are going on processes which build up the atoms one by one into more complex structures. Matter itself evolves." And then he adds the most important sentence. "The word comes from Darwin and biology, but it is the word that has changed physics in my lifetime." And this is Bronowski talking in the 1970s. He goes on to reflect on the formation of carbon. He says the formation of carbon atoms happen when 3 helium nuclei collide for 1/1,000,000 of a millionth of a second, 10 to the minus 12 of a second. Every carbon atom in every living creature is the result of such a widely improbable collision. Life and biology are indeed improbable, a chance event in our solar system's evolutionary history. And since I'm talking about carbon and Professor M.M. Sharma is here, all the reserves of carbon in the form of petroleum and everything else that we have is there from the Earth's birth. When did that happen? That happened over 4.5 billion years ago. After centuries of science, can one list its most important achievements? This is a question that you must be asked. Suppose someone asks you, what has science done? You should be able to answer. As freshly minted graduates, and also I might add as faculty tempered by experience, you might well try. But here I must quote the always eminently quotable physicist, Richard Feynman. In his introductory lecture, in his now immortal undergraduate course on physics at Caltech, he starts the physics class by asking a question. If in some cataclysm all of scientific knowledge were to be destroyed, and only one sentence passed on to the next generation of creatures, what statement would contain the most information in the fewest words? He asks this question. Think about it. He answers, "I believe it is the atomic hypothesis or the atomic fact or whatever you wish to call it, that all things are made of atoms, little particles that move around in perpetual motion, etc." He even describes the van der Waals force. So it's the atomic hypothesis. And you might ask yourself the question, when did the atomic hypothesis actually begin to emerge in the modern form that we know it today? The middle of the 19th century, when chemists began to think about it, and when Ludwig Boltzmann actually thought about it, the idea of heat and entropy. And then, of course, at the beginning of the 20th century, when the atomic revolution in physics really began. What was the cataclysm that Feynman was thinking about in the 60s which might destroy everything? Feynman was actually thinking about the threat of nuclear war, which everyone thought about at that time. Sadly, that prospect appears to have once again emerged. For those of you who are graduating, you must remember that in the world of geopolitics, there is little time to worry about the fragile thread by which life on Earth hangs, and the importance of preserving the natural world, which of course includes human beings, even as unsustainable consumption and development threaten the natural order. But instead, what we see, of course, are the problems that are happening, the problems that happen in Europe today, the problems that happen now in the Pacific, and you will find that we are closer and closer to the kind of situation that we used to worry about in the 1960s. But I'll go back to my question. What's the most important advance of science? In the year 1999-2000, as the new century was being born, new millennium was being born, the journal Nature commissioned established commentators to put forth their views on what was the most important scientific advance of the 20th century. So every week when the journal Nature came, I would read these essays. And you might have your own views on this subject based upon what you've read in the course of your studies. But for me, one essay that I read then still remains in my mind. This was written by the Canadian environmental scientist Václav Smil, who argued that the most important scientific advance of the 20th century, and this would please Professor Sharma, was the Haber-Bosch industrial synthesis of ammonia. Now I thought, how can the Haber-Bosch synthesis be important? After all, I also studied it when I was in college, and I hated it. There's nothing glamorous about nitrogen and hydrogen being compressed at high temperature, high pressure, in the presence of an exotic catalyst to give you ammonia. Why is this important? It is because it led to the industrial synthesis of urea, the fertilizer which drove the first agricultural revolution of the 20th century. Many millions of lives otherwise lost to famine were saved. In India, of course, the last famine that we had was in the mid-1960s when I was still a student at the Ferguson College in Pune. At that time, I distinctly remember that the Prime Minister then, Lal Bahadur Shastri, once went on All India Radio to ask all of us not to have our dinner on one day, something that you don't usually tell teenagers who feel hungry all the time. But we did have those. Agriculture led to the next agricultural revolution, biology really, the understanding of genetics, the understanding of plant hybrids, and so on. So the first agricultural revolution of the 20th century was driven by chemistry. The second agricultural revolution of the 20th century was driven by biology. Now in the world that you will encounter as you go out, you will find that it faces two threats, both eminent. The first is the spectre of food scarcity. In many countries already there is food scarcity because of a consequence of the ongoing war in Ukraine. The second is the old Cold War bogey of a nuclear exchange. These threats promise to unsettle the global order, thereby denying human populations the benefits accrued by centuries of scientific advance. And this is important because even in India today, more people talk of conflict than of development. In his book, Sapiens, which I hope you will have opportunity to read, the Israeli historian Yuval Harari traces the evolution of humankind. Harari's understanding of biological evolution is better than what I've seen among most biologists. He asks an interesting question, and I paraphrase. When in the course of human evolution does human behavior begin to disregard biological imperatives that dominate animal behavior and become increasingly influenced by recent history? What is animal behavior? The need to survive, the need to get food in order to survive, and the need to reproduce. That's all that biology demands. Animals are also part of, human beings are also part of the animal kingdom. When did human cognition evolve to the level where we began to distinguish ourselves from the rest of the animals. In Harari's words, the cognitive revolution is accordingly the point when history declared its independence from biology. The immense diversity of imagined realities that sapiens invented and the resultant diversity of behavior patterns are the main components of what we call cultures. We are all very proud of our culture. We have to ask, when did they come? He says once cultures appeared, they never cease to change and develop, and these unstoppable alterations are what we call history. From the cognitive revolution onwards, historical narratives replaced biological theories as our primary means of explaining the development of Homo sapiens. To understand the rise of Christianity or the French Revolution, it is not enough to comprehend the interactions of genes, hormones, and organisms. It is necessary to take into account the interaction of ideas, images, and fantasies. When did this happen? This happened with a scientific advance, agriculture. It is agriculture, the cultivation of fields, the invention of dairy farming, the domestication of animals that made human society stationary and distinguished them from animals. Once stationary societies were formed, you need to keep societies together. The only way you can keep societies together is to conjure up ideas which bind them together. You need mythology, you need religion, and you need the evolution of many of these things. In many of the contentious discussions which take place today on the origins of Aryans and Dravidians and so on, we are talking about 4,000 years or 5,000 years. But as scientists, you can go back all the way to millions of years. You can go back to the origin of life itself and when the first Homo sapiens really began to populate Earth. Comparative genomics today, one of the great developments of molecular biology, tell us that human beings are a minor branch in the tree of life, budding from the broader branch of eukarya. Life on Earth is dominated by the microbial branches, bacteria and archaea. Our closest neighbors are chimpanzees, rats, mice, pigs, horses, cattle, sheep and dogs. There is a certain comforting unity in biology. Yet, human history driven by civilizational influences and the evolution of culture appears to be sadly divisive. But today, 2 years after the coronavirus arrived, you will find that the virus has breached all political, religious, and ethnic boundaries, reminding us that politics and religion, two of our most favorite pastimes worldwide, afford no protection against the force of nature. And this is where Goethe's definition of nature is very, very important. You might ask in a convocation address, why do I draw your attention to such a disparate group of subjects? It is because of the environment, climatic, social, and political in which we live today. Some reflection on the role of science in understanding nature may allow us to introspect on the course of human history and attempt to rationalize why the world today is the way it is. Science is a deeply humbling subject, and every day we are reminded of our imperfect understanding of even the subjects of our daily research. It is this humility that I hope you have learned in the process of acquiring academic degrees. It will go a long way in guiding you in the future. There are two qualities that will stand you in good stead in whatever you wish to do: resilience and imagination. In research and indeed in many other walks of life, failure is more common than success. Overcoming the fear of failure is often the first step towards success. Let imagination take you forward. It has been a privilege to address you, and may I wish all of you the very best in the years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your valuable and enlightening words. I now request Professor Taposh Chakraborty, Director IACS, to begin with the presentation of degrees. Students are requested to kindly rise.
Let the candidates for the various degrees be presented. Further, by virtue of the authority vested in me as the chairman of the Academic Council of IACS Kolkata, I also do hereby admit the duly qualified candidates listed in the scroll for the respective degrees and charge them to prove worthy of the respective degrees. I also permit for the distribution of the degree certificates. Will the candidates who have received degree certificates by the university kindly stand? Do you solemnly and sincerely promise and declare that if admitted to the degree for which you have been qualified, you will in your daily life and conversation conduct yourself and become worthy members of the university? Do you solemnly and sincerely promise and declare that to the utmost of your opportunity and ability, you will use your powers for the promotion of true learning and in the service of your fellow men? Do you solemnly and sincerely promise that you will faithfully and diligently fulfill the duties of the profession to which you will eventually belong, and that you will, on all occasions, maintain its purity and reputation? By virtue of the authority vested in me as the Director of IACS, I admit you to the degrees for which you have been declared qualified by this IACS deemed to be university. Next.
Now will students please sit. Now degrees will be awarded to the graduating batch. First, the Master of Science batch. Master of Science for the School of Biological Sciences. Olivia Mondal. Nandana Nanda, she's not. Akash Chatterjee, Orunima Mukherjee, Neha Bishash, Neha Poddar, now in Physical Sciences, Gaurav Sharkar, Arnab Dash, Atanu Shahu, Siddhartha Shankar Soren, শ্রেষ্ঠা ঘোষ, from Physics, Srija Ghosh, Ribhu Pal, Raj Rajiv Upadhyay, Shatik Haldar, Krishnendu Ruidas, now from Chemistry, Orgo Chakraborty, Tanmay Chando, Pritha Chakraborty, Triparna Roy, Oyon Bhomik, Shorashish Vishwas, Shadham Gorai, Iti Ghosh, Piyush Dhali, Shoykot Dhibor, Ananya Hathi, she's not here, Tamal Datto, now from Chemical Sciences, Chandri Banerjee, Sudipta Kundu, Shobnindu Dev, Shubhamoy Pratihar, Gopin Pal, Hiranmoy Pal, Vaibhav Verma, Nayana Mukherjee, Orghodip Gorai, Ashmita Ash, now from Mathematics and Computing, Shubhajit Roy, Abhishek Lahiri, Shayan Pradhan, Harshika Rathi, Sharadil Ghosh, Saklin Ahmed, Now we invite our PhD degree recipients. First, Anup Devnath. His thesis title is Magnetotransport and Magnetic Aspects in Two-Dimensional Systems. Dhiman Shah. Thesis title is Stereoselective Total Synthesis of Bioactive Natural Products, Penticide A, Amphiramine 2 and studies directed towards the total synthesis of Vascatin A. Next is Dipandita Roy. She's not here. Madhumita Sharkar. She's not here. Nilanshu Mondol. His thesis title is Dynamical Effects in Molecular Structure for Applications in Homogeneous Catalysis. Shahidul Mondol, thesis title Design and Synthesis of Ruthenium-2, Phentyl and Pyridine Triazole Iodotriazole based complexes for phosphate sensing driven by supramolecular self-assembly. Mohammad Salman Khan is not here. Shubha Shamunto. Her thesis title is Synthesis of Nanocomposites and Investigations of Superionic Conduction and Magneto-Dielectric Behavior for Energy Storage or Magnetic Sensor Applications. Next, Tanima Nunde. Thesis title is Understanding Solvation and Photophysical Properties of Canonical and Non-Canonical Amino Acids and DNA in Complex Media. Taposh Kamelia, he's not here. Snehashish Chatterjee, thesis title is Electronic and Magnetic Properties of Intermetallic Hauser-related Compositions. Next, Devobrata Chakraborty. Thesis title is Design and Synthesis of Phosphonate Ligand-Based Metal Organic Frameworks for Energy and Sensing Applications. Next, Pratap Biswas. Thesis title Developing Multifunctional Metal Organic Hybrids, Coordination Polymers, Metal Organic Polyhedra and Metallogens. Last, Divyajyoti Chakraborty. He is not here. Okay. Sorry. Now I request our registrar, Ms. Sharmani Shah, to give her vote of thanks.
A warm and graceful good afternoon to our most valued honorable guests, Chairman, Governing Council, Director, our worthy teachers, parents, and my dear friends and everyone gathered here. It's my privilege to propose a vote of thanks and acknowledge the contribution of those who worked really hard to make this annual convocation ceremony a reality. I, Sharmani Shah, on behalf of the IACS deemed to be university and the entire fraternity and sorority of the institution, first of all extend our most sincere thanks to each one of you and our dignitaries present here for making today's event a resounding success. With your blessings, grace and wishes, we were able to make this event today what it was. On behalf of IACS, I extend a truly genuine vote of thanks to our guest of honor, Professor Manmohan Sharma, and the guest of eminence, Professor B. Balaram, for sparing valuable time from their schedule to grace this occasion. Sir, it was so heartening to welcome you after a long while here. Today we had an opportunity to hear your thoughts, and this will surely be going to enlighten us in our future endeavors. Our sincere most thanks to Professor Vinod K. Singh, Chairman Governing Council of IACS, who had been instrumental in guiding us in holding this convocation, alerting us about the protocols and conventions, which undoubtedly is a new experience for us. Sir, your thoughts have equipped our minds and have shown us a new path. I sincerely thank all the members of the Governing Council and the Academic Council for their unstinting support and advice extended from time to time in defining the trajectory of the newly created deemed to be university. We are grateful to our director for keeping faith in us, which encouraged us and drove us to deliver our best possible efforts in organizing the annual convocation today. We are thankful to our deans and associate deans who have been with the administration, sharing their insightful thoughts and unconditional support for planning and organizing this annual convocation. Thanks to all the chairs who have actually bridged our dear students and their academic requirements with the administration. Special thanks to the Statute Committee under the Dean Faculty Affairs and the Convocation Committee under the Dean Academy, who minutely defined and described each one step for organizing the event. I am grateful to all the members of the different committees and subcommittees. I am perhaps not doing justice in naming each one of them, but in the interest of time, I say a big thank you to each one of you. The support staff, both technical and administrative, have been overwhelming and outstanding in doing their work relentlessly for the last few days. I would extend my gratitude to the students who have taken in strides their commitment during the transition when IACS became a deemed to be university from the age-old research institution, and for their fortitude during the dreadful pandemic period when uncertainty has been the norm of the day. My dear students, a convocation ritual appears to be an abrupt end to a long cherished dream. It is a slow start to an even longer dream. A convocation ceremony for students is a landmark achieved which will forever hold a very special place in their hearts, and they will cherish their moments forever. We at IACS wholeheartedly wish all our students a glorious future. Our students have always been our pride and honor, and we are certain each one of you will make IACS and your parents proud. To conclude, thanks to all the graduating students whose experience has been and will be a lesson in our new endeavor, which will help us improve in the coming years. Congratulations to you all too on attaining a milestone in your life today. Wish you good luck for the journey ahead. Once again, my gratitude to all present here, gracing the occasion and joining us in our celebration that has made it complete and fulfilling. Thank you very much.
I now invite our Chairman Convocation Committee to...
Do I have the permission of the Chairman Governing Council to close this convocation ceremony?
Yeah.
Okay, I declare the convocation ceremony closed. Now, may I request all of you to please stand up for the national anthem.
जनगणमन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंधु गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल गंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मा